Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my January wrap-up. I read 4 books in January, probably my slowest reading month in a very long time, but I feel like it was actually a pretty good reading month and I enjoyed most of what I read, and so that is a success in my book. In my books. In my book. Don't really have much else to say. I'm glad January is over. Let's move on to February and let's talk about these 4 books. The first book that I finished in January was In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is the second book in the Lovelight Farm series. And I have to say, I am falling more in love with Lovelight Farms, the whole community, and just this series the more I get into it. I adored this book. I loved Beckett, who is the main male character in Lovelight Farms, and I love him even more after reading this book. So this is the romance between Beckett, who is like the farmer from Lovelight Farms, and Evelyn, who is the Instagram influencer from book 1, and their love story. You find out snippets of their backstory, I guess you could say, in book 1, and this explores that more. This is kind of Grumpy Sunshine because Beckett is, I guess you could say, the stereotypical grumpy main male character, but I actually really enjoyed his character. I felt like, yes, he was grumpy, but it wasn't because he was like a malicious, mean person that had like unresolved issues. It was because he has social anxiety and he has so many feelings that he doesn't know what to do with, and his heart is so big, but he's kind of closed off. I just loved the unraveling of his character. And then Evelyn, I really enjoyed her character as well. I feel like I couldn't really relate to, obviously, her lifestyle because she is an influencer, but her issue with kind of losing herself in her work and her passion and then like not really knowing what she wants in her life anymore is very relatable. So I just feel like the topics discussed in this book were very relatable and their romance was beautiful. They fought for each other in unselfish ways. They worked together really well, and I feel like it was just such a good feel-good romance. I really had no issues with it, so loved this book. I also wanted to say, I feel like going forward, I might stop giving star ratings to books because I feel like my star rating changes over time. I also feel like sometimes I land on a rating, but there's so much nuance to a number, and I just feel like sometimes giving a certain star rating to a book will turn off people from reading it, even though I would recommend it. I think going forward, I might stop doing star ratings and we'll see how it goes. The next book I read in January, I actually listened to as an audiobook, and it was From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. So this is a memoir about Lisa Marie Presley's life, but because she died before she finished it, Riley Keough kind of pulled the pieces together from what she could and released this, and I really enjoyed this book. I don't know a lot about Elvis's life other than like the basics of obviously his stardom to fame and his death, but other than that, I'm not like deep into the lore of that whole family drama. But I adore Riley Keough. I love her as an actress. I love her as like a person in the limelight. Like, I find she's such a beautiful person, and I loved her in Daisy Jones and the Six. And so that kind of got me interested into listening to this as an audiobook because it is narrated by her, as well as, oh my God, what is her name? Julia Roberts? Is it Julia Roberts? Yes, Julia Roberts. And it was beautiful. I felt like even though I could not really relate or understand Lisa Marie as a person because of just the fame and the lifestyle she grew up living, I felt very connected to her when she was talking about the grief of her father. And It's very clear that she has rose-tinted glasses, whatever that terminology is, when it comes to her father. I wouldn't say I'm like the same way with my dad who has passed, but I choose to remember the good rather than the bad. And I feel like that is something that she does, and a lot of people fault her for that. But I feel like it is such a realistic view of grief when it comes to parents and people that you look up to. Obviously, not everyone will grieve the same, but I feel like it is very relatable and realistic to me. There are some quotes that I wrote down in my reading journal that I wanted to just say about this book, or parts about this book that really spoke to me. I had a list, but I only had like a little section left that I could put quotes in, so I just chose, I think there's about 3. So the first one, I think this one Riley was saying, and she said, "Whenever I go to the South and hear the Memphis accent, I feel a longing and nostalgia for something I never lived. I've never lived in Memphis, but something inside of me has." I know exactly what she means. Next one was also Riley speaking, and it was, "The physical connection we have to the voices of our loved ones is profound. I know how heavy grief makes my body feel." I think that was a break in between a paragraph. And then this one, I believe it was a quote from Lisa Marie Presley, and she said, "The only way out is through. You must allow pain in to free yourself from it." Really enjoyed that memoir. The next book I read in January was The Door by Magda Szabo. I talked about this in my winter recommendations. This has been on my mind since I finished it. I am so flabbergasted when it comes to this book. What a crazy, beautiful, and unique book this was. This book is about a woman named Magda, who is an author and a wife, and she is on the hunt to look for a housekeeper to kind of keep her house in order because she just can't. She's too busy. And then she hears about a woman named Emerence in her kind of community, I guess you could say, who is known to be like the best of the best, but a very unique person, and you kind of need her to like you for her to work for you. Like, she won't just work for anybody. She's very particular about who she works for. So then she ends up working for Magda, and you're following along kind of like decades of their life together and their relationship and the complexities of like meshing 2 different worlds together, where Magda comes from like an educational background with wealth, just a whole different kind of class, versus Emerence, who like grew up in poverty, doesn't have an educational background, isn't, you know, into all of these things, and values different things. And it's just so fascinating. There's also a mystery that's tied into this story that really threw me for a loop throughout the book and caught me off guard by the end. It was just such a beautiful exploration of like relationships and humanity, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I underlined so much of this book, and let me see if I can read some of my favorite quotes. A lot of them will kind of spoil things, I think. I will read a passage from literally the first page, because I was so taken aback with Magda's writing. The way that she describes things is so easy to envision in your head and so beautifully described. It's blew me away so many times. But in this first paragraph, she says, "As a child and young woman, I had no dreams, either good or bad, but in old age, I am confronted repeatedly with horrors from my past, all the more dismaying because compressed and compacted and more terrible than anything I have lived through. In fact, nothing has ever happened to me of the kind that now drags me screaming from my sleep." Another sentence. "Logic told me that I had no right to what I expected from the old woman, but logic can't screen out everything, certainly not such unexpected feelings of loss and sheer disappointment." beautiful. Like, oh, I know now what I didn't then, that affection can't always be expressed in calm, orderly, articulate ways, and that one cannot prescribe the form it should take for anyone else. Period. Anyways, beautiful book, and it's so short yet so impactful. It took me a long time to read this because I was just so absorbed with the language and the words that I would reread pages, and I just loved. Then the last book I read in January, along with probably hundreds of thousands of people, was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. So this is the third book in the Imperium series. Okay, I think this is my least favorite of the series so far. I was journaling about it in my journal I keep for when I'm reading a book, and I was ranting. I just ranted about this book in here. Ranted. And it will be hard for me to explain everything because it is obviously book 3. Overall, I would say this book felt very fillery. It felt a little bit unnecessary. The story and the plot did not flow well. You were thrown into so many different circumstances and missions that didn't flow together well. It was info dumpy, yet you weren't provided enough information to understand what was going on. I don't know if future books, like the last 2 books of this series, will tie together all the knots of this book that were left untied, because there were so many plots that were just opened and just left there and then moved on to something else. And you're like, you just introduced like 30 new people to us, all these different people, all these different political persons, and then you just left it open without tying it together a little bit before moving on to the next thing. It just felt so unfinished, and I really hope we get some answers in the next books because this just felt messy to me. I also feel like the love I had for so many of the characters is gone. That's all I'm gonna say. I do have to say, though, a few characters that really kept me going in this book were, of course, the dragons, because how can you not love the dragons? I really loved Riddick and Garrick. I really enjoyed Imogen. And then the rest I don't want to talk about because it will spoil, I think, for the first 2 books. Also, the ending where the last few chapters were all in different perspectives was really confusing to me. I didn't like that. And then I guess the plot twist we get, I don't want to say that. A lot of things are just unresolved by the end of this book. Actually, almost everything that you don't know in the start of the book, you still don't know by the end of the book. And that was very frustrating. Like, at least tie something together and not leave everything as a cliffhanger. So, yeah, not my favorite. Did not really enjoy it. I do think I will continue the series because I am already deep into it. So I'll probably read the last 2 books, but I am quite disappointed, I guess you could say, with where the direction of this series has gone. And I just really hope and pray that Rebecca Yarros knows what she's doing and she will tie it all together, because if it continues to be like this, I will be so disappointed and feel like I wasted so much time. Those are the 4 books I read in January. It was a lot of different books, I would say, and I took my time with all of them, so a little bit less than I typically read. January was also just a shit of a month. Let's just leave it at that, and I'm really hoping that February is a lot better. And I already can tell it is, because so many good books have come out in January and February, and I am indulging in all the romances because of Valentine's Day, and I'm already having a blast. So thank you all for spending this time with me. Let me know what you read in January and what books you would recommend. And I will see you all in my next video. Oh my god. Someone's got zoomies. Bye. What are you doing? What? Oh my god. We'll see you all next week, right? Right? Okay, maybe not Spice, but you'll see me next week. Bye.